Welcome, welcome. You know, freedom from the thought process is freedom from the ego, freedom from the limited perspective that is driven by karma. And the freedom can come in the seeing how the whole thing works. Thoughts tend to come in clusters. So the attention is darting back and forth from thought to thought so quickly that there never is time to actually land on a particular thought. It's a constant motion of attention. But when this process is not fed by attention, the thought complexes begin to slow down because they are fed by the attention they are given. And when they slow down, it becomes possible to land directly on what is called a thought. But what happens when you land directly on a thought is you discover there is nothing there. When there is no distance, landing directly on something, being completely at one with it, at no distance. When there is no distance, there is no time. When there is no time, there is no one. And then there is the taste of the true self. And the taste is so beautiful, so rich and so real. And then the habit returns in a cluster of thoughts, and the attention starts moving all about, never having time to land on anything, just in constant motion. But when this is not fed with attention, it lifts just like smoke. And there is the recognition that in the moment, which is reality, there is no thought. Eventually, in not feeding the process that distracts the attention by remaining still in reality, in the moment, the clusters of thoughts start to break apart and you begin to have the possibility to witness individual thoughts arising out of nowhere and dissolving back into nowhere. And from this vantage point, there is the recognition that the thought is only appearance. It's not coming from someone. And what begins to happen is there begins to be gaps, spaces between thoughts as the attention rests in what is unmoving. So the machinery slows down. When the machinery slows down, there begins to be a deeper and deeper recognition that there are no thoughts now, that the cluster of thoughts creating all of this movement builds an imaginary world. And you let go of the imagination by remaining still in the moment, which is now and alive. And as this deepens, the relationship with thought shifts. The draw into thought weakens. The recognition that in reality, in the feeling of yourself, in what is eternal, a thought can never be found. It only appears when it is coming in clusters that cause the attention to constantly move around, never having time to directly land on anything. But as you fall into yourself more and more fully, this process begins to unravel. Thoughts begin to arise not as clusters, but individual thoughts. And you turn to land on an individual thought, and it evaporates. Because when you are one with something, you are in the moment. When you are in the moment, you are in reality. And reality is eternity, and it is still and unchanging. So there begins to be a shift from the following of the appearance of thought to resting in the space between thoughts, resting in the space, in the gaps between thoughts. And then when the appearance of a thought arises, it no longer affects anything. Like a cloud in the sky, the cloud does not affect the sky. It's just moving through the vastness of the infinite sky, which remains unchanged. As you start resting in the space between thoughts, these gaps begin to become larger. the frequency of thought begins to slow down, and the sense of reality, the beauty, the light begins to predominate. So just right now, allowing the mind to do what it does, it's only a phantom. It only seems real when the thoughts come in and bombard the attention in these large clusters where the motion is constantly occurring. This still happens. When it happens, you notice it. Just let it be. Just let it be. And it begins to unravel all on its own because it is an appearance, a conditioned appearance that conditions the way one experiences life. But eventually you discover it is not about the thoughts. How can it be about something that is only an appearance? What it is about is the space between the thoughts. And when resting in this space, thoughts move through just like phenomena moving through the infinite space of consciousness, touching nothing. And the more this has fallen into, the more the gaps between the thoughts grows, the less frequent the thoughts themselves. And when this slows down, the myth of thinking, of thoughts, of someone thinking is revealed. That there's no one thinking, that it's just a cluster of conditioned habits making attention move so fast it can never land on anything to really see what it is. And this is the way the mirage is created. This is the way living a life where everything is driven by karma for every character. This is the way it unravels. Being here now, being at one with the feeling of existence, which is always only ever now. The feeling of this has no thought in it. The feeling of this remains when it is landed upon because it is reality. So thoughts can come and go. They can move through the space of conscious awareness. It need not be a disturbance. If it is a disturbance, the process of distraction is being fed, and in a moment the thoughts will come in clusters once again. But it's just letting the programming of the mind be. There is this very obvious illusion that there is someone called you who is the thinker. But the myth is blown apart when you remain present within yourself, living in the space, in the gap between thoughts, enables one to remain in the presence, in the face of the phenomena of passing thoughts without it affecting anything. And then it dissolves as quickly as it arises. The nature of consciousness is pure peace, endless, infinite peace. And inherent within that peace is joy. So the attention shifts from tracking thoughts to falling into the space between thoughts as the thoughts begin to slow down. And then there is a complete shift in the sense of reality. You begin to realize your nature is the nameless presence that lives in the thoughtless mind. And then the mind can do its true job. Clear mind is awareness. Mind is aware. Pure heart is the feeling of being. Pure mind is the awareness without thought. And awareness, aware of its own nature. This is the bliss of being that is felt in the heart. So let the mind do whatever it does. It does not really matter. Let the form do what it does. It does not really matter. When it is identified with, it is playing out karma. And then there is the experience of issue. When you are resting in the space between thoughts and movement occurs in the form, what is felt is the movement everywhere. It becomes all-inclusive instead of separating. The movement comes out of the collective field of consciousness that it is one with. And there is the taste of harmony. Even when things are shaken up, out of the offering of the work to free everything, your taste is the taste of harmony because you live in the gap between thoughts, the oasis, the beauty that lives in the gap between thoughts. And if the thoughts are racing and the gap is not being tasted, just patience, just patience in witnessing mind instead of living in its content. Realizing that the thinker is imagination. Recognizing that it is impossible to find a thought, because to find something is to be one with it. When you are at no distance, when you are one with anything, what remains is yourself, the self, the beauty. You discover you are the beauty. you discover you are the beauty. You are not bound to the conditioned cluster of thought complexes which create repetitive behaviors that always bring on a sense of challenge. When the absolute priority in the life is to live in yourself, all of that breaks apart. It all breaks apart. And what remains is the silence that is permeating everything. And then what appeared as objects is recognized to just be appearance. And the feeling of the silence, which is one, is felt through everything. When movement occurs, it's like the wind blowing in the sky. The wind is not separate from anything. It is part of totality. It's just movement. It's alive. You can feel the aliveness. You can feel the aliveness that lives in the gap between thoughts right now. If the gap is elusive, just try and find a thought. It's impossible. It appears as clusters which cause the attention to move so quickly, but if you look for a thought, it is impossible to find. And then what is there, what remains, is the gap between thoughts, the silence that does not go away, the infinite space in which phenomena appears to be, moving through the infinite space, which is not appearance, but the feeling of yourself. And the mind remains clear, pure awareness that witnesses the nature and mechanics of what has created the imaginary life. Living in this moment, leaving the mind alone, not needing to touch it, relaxing into the feeling of being with clear mind as awareness, aware of everything. And this awareness turns to itself, becoming aware of itself. And this is the bliss of being. And this is your true nature. And the vigilance lies in remaining, in not following the seductive habit that creates the fantasy that is always a struggle on some level. While in the moment, in the gap between thoughts, lives the taste of eternity, the taste of pure beauty, the taste of this moment, the taste of the self, the taste of pure happiness, the recognition of the oneness that the thought clusters created an experience of as being broken and separated. But it's not real. What is real is the feeling of now, the space between thought. And in this, what is felt is that silence is not in pieces. It is seamless everywhere, all the time, always here. This is how you free yourself from the illusion of being someone. Right now, in reality, not touching a thought, just resting in what is equally everywhere. This is the bliss of being. This is the offering of the moment. This is what satsang is all about. So let us sit quietly together for a little while, and we will do questions as normal in the afternoon. Thank you all for satsang.